In the dim glow of a family gathering, where smiles hide sharpened knives, one whispered insult shatters the fragile facade. As Edith watches her daughter's innocence crumble under her parents' cold gaze, she ignites a chain of defiance that unleashes buried secrets, desperate manipulations, and a battle for control that could either free her forever or destroy everything she holds dear. But in this web of toxic ties, who will break first? My name is Edith A. Larkin, and at 36 years old, I carried a rage that simmered like a storm cloud ready to burst. It wasn't just aimed at my mother for her cutting words that sliced through the air like invisible blades. It burned equally for my father, who sat there in his eternal silence, letting the poison flow unchecked. That's the rhythm of our family, her venomous tongue lashing out, his quiet complicity echoing it. He'd nod sometimes, chuckle at her barbs, or feign deafness, but never once did he intervene. Not for me, and certainly not for my precious daughter. It was my brother Ryan's 34th birthday, and like clockwork, he extended the invitation to all of us, as if normalcy could be summoned like a delivery order, plated neatly on a table despite the deep fissures cracking the ground beneath. For his sake alone, I swallowed my pride and agreed to the charade. I even splurged on a thoughtful gift, unwilling to let their ugliness taint his day. I dressed my daughter impeccably, not out of necessity, but from hard-learned caution. People like my mother pounce on the tiniest imperfections as excuses for their cruelty. She wore a delicate pink dress adorned with puff sleeves and embroidered strawberries, her hair brushed to glossy perfection twice over, because she'd whispered to me that Grandma preferred it neat. That innocent admission nearly shattered me right there in our hallway. No child should navigate an adult's malice like a minefield, but she already did, having absorbed it from watching me endure it time and again. I despised that legacy I'd unwittingly passed on. As we stepped into my parents' home, a fleeting warmth enveloped us, the aroma of fresh-baked bread mingling with sweet cake frosting, soft music drifting from the living room, Ryan's children sliding across the floor in their socks, giggling wildly. His wife caught my eye and waved with that familiar blend of exhaustion and genuine kindness, as if gentleness was her armor against this family's sharp edges. My daughter clutched my hand tightly, her eyes sparkling as she asked if she could present Uncle Ryan with her drawing. She'd sketched him as a caped superhero, beaming with unbridled joy, still clinging to the belief that adults remained benevolent, especially on days meant for celebration. I whispered, "Yes, of course." I always said yes to her, shielding that spark of hope as best I could. We ventured deeper into the house, and that's when the illusion cracked. There sat my mother at the dining table, casually sipping white wine as if it were mere water, her gaze snapping first to my daughter, then to me. Her face remained a mask of indifference. She leaned toward my father, murmuring words I couldn't catch, but her lips formed them with deliberate clarity, ensuring I read every syllable. "We don't sit with kids like you." She didn't flinch when she realized I'd seen it. Instead, she locked eyes with me, defiant, as if concealment wasn't worth the effort. My father glanced at her, then at me, and let out an abrupt, hollow laugh, the kind that follows a cruel jest devoid of real humor. A ripple of chuckles spread through the nearby guests, not from understanding the barb, but because power's laughter is contagious, pulling others into its orbit. My daughter stood there, still beaming, her small hands cradling the drawing like a treasure, awaiting the welcome that should have come naturally, yearning to be affirmed as part of this circle. The room seemed to narrow, the air thickening with unspoken tension, my heart pounding as I fought the urge to explode. But I held back. No arguments, no accusations hurled at my mother, no demand for my father to explain his callous mirth. Instead, I knelt to her level, my voice a hushed whisper in her ear. "We have to go now, sweetheart." Confusion clouded her eyes, but she nodded obediently. She always nodded, accustomed to abrupt exits and shattered plans she shouldn't have to comprehend. I grasped her hand and we slipped out silently, the door clicking shut behind us like a final punctuation on the evening's betrayal. Ryan intercepted us in the driveway, his face etched with panic, pleading to know what had transpired, why we were fleeing so soon. I downplayed it, insisting I refused to spark a scene on his special day, urging him not to confront them, not today. He peered back at the illuminated window, suspicion dawning, but he relented. He enveloped my daughter in a quick hug, praising her drawing with forced enthusiasm, and watched our car pull away. His expression twisted as if swallowing acid. Back home, the evening unraveled into quiet routine. I warmed leftover pasta in the microwave for her, watching as she doodled absent-mindedly while eating. Then came the question that pierced like a dagger. Did Grandma not like my drawing? I assured her it had nothing to do with her art, but she nodded once more and retreated to her room without protest, the weight of unspoken hurt hanging in the air. At precisely 10:06 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my father. One stark sentence. "Payment tomorrow, right?" No inquiry about our well-being, no allusion to the disrupted dinner, not even a veneer of concern. Just the blunt reminder that I was their financial lifeline, their retirement crutch. I stared at the glowing screen until it faded to black, a surge of resolve hardening within me. My fingers typed back. "I don't help parents like you." Silence followed. No reply, no immediate backlash. The next morning, fueled by that cold clarity, I logged into every linked account and severed the ties. Halted transfers, canceled bills, disconnected auto pays for their car insurance I'd shouldered, blocked pharmacy payments for their essential medications. In mere minutes, the invisible threads I'd woven to sustain their lives frayed and snapped. They didn't reach out that first day, or the second, but I knew the absence gnawed at them, and deep down, a knot of apprehension tightened. This was merely the prelude, for my parents never accepted silence as defeat. They wielded it as a weapon, biding their time to strike back. The absence of their fury on day one unsettled me more than any outburst could. I'd braced for explosions, screaming calls, barrage of accusations rattling my phone like thunder. Instead, a pristine quiet descended, almost theatrical, as if they orchestrated it to force my hand, waiting for me to crack under the pressure. I refused. Dropping my daughter at school, I observed her skip through the gates, backpack swaying, and vowed inwardly that whatever tempest brewed, it would not reach her shores. By the second day, Ryan phoned, his tone laced with caution, navigating the tightrope between familial duty and unease. He described our mother pacing relentlessly, rifling through drawers as if searching for a miraculous fix, while our father slammed cabinets with frustrated force. "Did you really stop the payments, or is it some glitch?" he probed. I confirmed it was no error. It was deliberate, a line drawn in the sand. He was quiet for a long beat, the kind of silence that carries weight. Then he asked the question I dreaded. How long was I going to keep this up? How long would I punish them? That word, punish, landed like a slap. As if protecting myself and my child from their poison was the real cruelty, not the years of erasure and humiliation they'd inflicted. I didn't bite. Instead, I asked about his kids, steering us to safer ground. He sighed, heavy and resigned, and said they were fine. We ended the call with nothing settled, the tension lingering like smoke. By the end of the week, reality had sunk in for my parents. The pharmacy rang me directly, polite but confused, asking why their usual card had been declined for a prescription refill. An automated email from the car insurance company arrived, warning of impending lapse. My father left a voicemail, his voice feigning bewilderment, blaming bank errors and technical gremlins, as though the universe had conspired against him overnight. My mother followed with a text dripping in practiced politeness. It isn't right to take things out on us when we've done nothing but raise you properly. Nothing. That single word lodged in my throat like a stone. No reference to the birthday party, no whisper of remorse for the way she'd reduced my daughter to an outsider in a room full of family. Just blank denial, wrapped in entitlement. I left them on read. A few days later, Ryan showed up unannounced. He didn't come with lectures or excuses. Instead, he carried an enormous bag stuffed with markers, glitter pens, colored pencils, the kind of art supplies that make a child's eyes widen. He sat on the couch with my daughter, letting her show him every drawing while he played silly cartoon videos on his phone. She glowed in his presence. He'd always been safe, never once uttering a word that could wound her. Watching them together squeezed something deep in my chest. Gratitude laced with grief that this kindness felt so rare. Then he glanced out the window and froze. Is that their car? I looked. It was. Parked crookedly at the curb, no call, no text, no warning. They simply appeared, assuming entry like they always had. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. My mother let herself in with the spare key she'd never returned, my father trailing behind, already grumbling about disrespect and nonsense. The instant they spotted Ryan, their posture shifted, voices softened, smiles appeared. Of course, he was the golden child, tall, successful, confident, no visible vulnerabilities they could exploit. I was the other one, the one they'd never stop reminding of her place. The argument ignited before I could draw breath. My mother accused me of turning my daughter into a victim for attention. My father demanded to know how long I intended to punish them for being old-fashioned. Ryan's voice rose, something I'd never heard before. He told them to stop, told them they couldn't treat people that way and still expect loyalty, money, access. They turned on him in an instant, disappointment rolling off them in waves. But the venom felt diluted, less lethal, as though the ground beneath them had begun to shift and they sensed it. Finally, Ryan said the words I never thought I'd hear from him. Leave. Now. My mother stared at him as if he'd struck her. My father said nothing, just snatched his coat and followed her out. The door closed with a soft click, and the house fell into a silence so profound it almost hummed. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a fault line, waiting for the next tremor. 3 days later, Ryan called again. He sounded drained. Our parents had dropped off extravagant gifts for his children, toys, clothes, even brand new tablets, but nothing for my daughter. Not a card, not a single small token. He paused, then added quietly that he'd already bought her presents anyway, as if trying to cushion the blow even while delivering it. Then came the unexpected. He was repossessing the car he'd given them 2 months earlier, the one they'd paraded like their own purchase. Until they apologize, really apologize, they don't get to keep the perks of being family. I didn't thank him. I didn't cry. I just listened as the balance of power tilted again, heavier now, but no longer resting entirely on my shoulders. Christmas arrived too quickly, the way it does when you're too busy bracing yourself to notice the calendar flipping. My daughter asked for little that year, just a sketchbook with thick pages and markers that wouldn't bleed through her drawings. That was all. She even said she didn't mind if it wasn't wrapped. I bought her exactly that, plus a few quiet treasures: sloth print socks, a cozy purple hoodie, a tiny cat-shaped desk lamp. Nothing extravagant, but when she unwrapped them at home on Christmas morning, her face illuminated like I'd given her the moon. We planned to stay in, just us, but Ryan insisted we join them for Christmas Day. "It won't feel right without you," he said. "The kids keep asking about their cousin." I hesitated. I knew our parents would be there. He swore he'd handle anything that arose. Against every instinct screaming caution, I agreed. We arrived early. My daughter dashed off with her cousins, laughter trailing behind her, and for a fragile moment, everything felt almost ordinary. I helped my sister-in-law in the kitchen, peeling potatoes, stirring gravy, the scent of hot cider curling through the air, soft carols playing low. I let myself hope, just for a heartbeat, that this time might be different. Then tires crunched on the driveway. I didn't need to look. My brother's wife peeked through the curtain and sighed. "They're here," she murmured, already setting out extra glasses as if bracing for impact. My parents swept in, loud and artificially bright, arms laden with oversized red and gold gift bags like stage props. They distributed presents to Ryan's boys first, elaborate toys, new clothes, thick envelopes of cash tucked inside. They even produced a full-size drone for a 10-year-old. The performance was loud, deliberate, meant to be witnessed. I watched my daughter stand near the tree, smiling politely, her gaze darting from my mother's hands to the floor. She waited. She always waited. Nothing came. My mother flicked a glance at her, then looked away as though she were invisible. My father cracked a joke about how some kids didn't need more junk, especially if they weren't active anyway. I heard the tiny, involuntary sound my daughter made, the soft catch in her throat she thinks no one hears. She didn't speak. She simply picked up her sketchbook and slipped upstairs. Ryan noticed instantly. He rose, ribbon still dangling from his fingers, and fixed our mother with a steady look. "Where's her gift?" My mother's face remained serene. She said she hadn't expected us to show up, that she thought I was trying to separate the family again. Then, without missing a beat, she added that it wasn't her responsibility to cater to a child who clearly had health issues. Health issues. The words hung in the room like smoke from a fresh wound. Ryan set the ribbon down carefully. He walked to the coat closet, grabbed his jacket and keys. Someone asked where he was going. He answered calmly, "I'm getting the car back." My father scoffed. My mother launched into rapid excuses, overreactions, everything they'd sacrificed. Ryan didn't engage. He simply walked out. They stood, frozen, stunned, as though someone had flipped a switch and cut the lights. Then they left too, clutching empty gift bags, no grand exit, just gone. After they vanished, I climbed the stairs. My daughter sat on the guest bed, drawing a small house with one window and a tightly shut door. No people. I sat beside her. She asked if Grandma and Grandpa forgot her. I said no. She asked if they didn't like her. I couldn't lie. The truth was uglier. They were trying to erase her, to punish her for not fitting their mold, thin, quiet, perfect, easy to display. Someone who didn't resemble me, someone who came from me. That night, Ryan returned with the car keys. He said they wouldn't apologize, they'd just demand the car back, and he was right. The next morning at 9:12, my mother called. No greeting, no, "How are you?" No mention of her granddaughter. She launched straight into how unreasonable Ryan was being, how they desperately needed the car, how cruel it was to strip them of it during the holidays. Not a single word about the missing gift, not a breath of acknowledgement for the venom she'd spat at a child. I let her voice fill the line, sharp, rehearsed, rising in pitch. Then I ended the call without a word. I thought that silence would close the chapter. I was wrong. I'd convinced myself that reclaiming the car would be the final blow, that they'd retreat into sulking, fire off a few guilt-laced messages, then fade away until time eroded my resolve, and they could slink back pretending nothing had happened. That was their classic cycle: inflict damage, vanish, reappear with convenient amnesia. But this time, the pattern broke. 3 days after Christmas, the doorbell rang at 7:42 a.m. No respectable person arrives before 8 unless it's an emergency or a calculated statement. I knew which this was before I even reached the peephole. My mother stood on the porch clutching a thick white envelope, dressed in her signature wool coat, the one she wore when she wanted to project both reasonableness and authority. My father lingered a half step behind, hands jammed in his pockets, irritation already radiating off him like heat. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me so they couldn't cross the threshold. Upstairs, my daughter was still asleep, music drifting faintly from her room. I intended to keep her world untouched by this. My mother didn't bother with hello. She thrust the envelope forward like a bargaining chip. "This is for January," she said flatly. "We want the car back." I didn't reach for it. She pushed it closer, then sweetened the offer with the casual cruelty only she could muster. "If that's what it takes, we'll even apologize." Even apologize. As though remorse were a chore they could check off a list to regain access. Not because they felt it, not because shame had finally pierced them, just because they wanted their convenience restored. Behind me, soft footsteps padded down the stairs. My daughter appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, offering a small, uncertain wave. My mother didn't return it, didn't even glance her way. That indifference was louder than any insult she'd ever spoken. I didn't shout. I didn't debate. I simply closed the door, slowly, deliberately, the latch clicking like a period at the end of a very long sentence. They didn't knock again. The envelope remained on the porch mat, untouched. I made breakfast. I braided her hair. We went for a walk in the crisp morning air. I said nothing about the visitors. Later, I texted Ryan. He groaned audibly through the phone, already anticipating trouble. Then he told me something I hadn't known. A week before Christmas, our parents had quietly tried to reinstate me in their will. Not out of regret, not out of love. Pure strategy. They'd told him they wanted to do the right thing and make it up to me. He'd shut it down, told them not to bother unless the apology was real, raw, and unconditional. They'd refused. Instead, they'd shown up at my door with cash in an envelope, believing money could buy back what decency never earned. 2 mornings later, my phone buzzed with a photo from my father. The car sat outside a mechanic shop, hood up, tools scattered. Caption: "Hope your brother's ready to pay for this." No context, no explanation. Just blame lobbed like shrapnel. I deleted it without replying. That same afternoon, my daughter wandered outside to water the potted herbs and came back holding the envelope. "Someone left this behind the flower pot," she said, handing it to me like it was ordinary mail. Inside wasn't cash or a demand. It was a handwritten letter from my aunt, my mother's older sister, someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 9 years. She wrote that a cousin who'd been at Ryan's birthday dinner had told her everything. She apologized for staying silent so long. She described growing up under the same regime, our grandmother cutting her down, isolating her, controlling every breath until she learned to disappear. "I know what it feels like," she wrote, "to be the child who was never chosen." At the bottom, she left her number and added, "If you ever want to talk, or if she ever wants to visit, I'd love to know her." I folded the letter carefully and slid it into a drawer. That night, after my daughter was asleep, I sat on the couch staring at the front door. No knocks, no demands, no voices clawing for entry. For the first time, the silence didn't feel hollow. It felt like breathing room. New Year's passed in perfect quiet. No calls, no cryptic holiday texts laced with scripture and guilt. Just absence. Part of me exhaled in relief. Another part stayed vigilant. Silence from them had never meant surrender. It meant recalibration. 2 weeks into January, my daughter received her first sleepover invitation. Ryan's youngest was turning 7, and the girls had been glued together since Christmas. She counted down the days with shining eyes, packed her pajamas a week early, wrapped a new drawing in tissue paper, and taped a candy cane to it so it feels special. She hummed the entire drive over, feet kicking the seat, joy so pure it still startled me after everything. We arrived early. I stayed for lunch, helping in the kitchen while Ryan grilled outside, steam rising into the winter air. It felt easy, safe. I let myself believe we might finally have uncomplicated family moments. Then tires crunched on the gravel. My brother's wife glanced out the window and muttered, "They're here," already setting 2 extra glasses on the counter like battle prep. My parents entered with the same performative cheer, bright voices, wide smiles, gift bags swinging. They handed out presents to Ryan's children first: toys, clothes, envelopes of cash, even a shiny new smartwatch with a neatly tied tag. The generosity was loud, theatrical, staged for an audience. My daughter was upstairs helping set up sleeping bags. She didn't witness the distribution, but I did. When the last gift was given, their hands were empty. No card, no trinket, not even a piece of candy. My mother never looked toward the stairs. My father remarked loudly that some kids had too much stuff these days, especially ones who weren't structured. He glanced at me as though I'd nod in agreement. Ryan stood slowly, not furious, just done. He asked one question. "Why didn't you bring anything for my niece?" My mother bristled, offended by the audacity of being questioned. She claimed they hadn't known if we'd be there, that I was probably keeping her away again. My father added that it was likely for the best. Some children became dependent with too much attention. "Leave," Ryan said. They laughed at first, assuming jest. He wasn't joking. "You don't get to walk in here," he continued, voice level. "Hand gifts to everyone except her and pretend it isn't cruel. You don't get to hurt my sister in my house." They argued, voices climbing, but he cut through. "Get out. Now." They left, stiff, silent, empty bags dangling. When the door shut, the house seemed to inhale. Ryan sat back down, passed me the salad bowl, and asked if I wanted seconds. No apologies, no explanations, just normalcy reclaimed. I stayed to tuck my daughter in beside her cousin, kissed her forehead, promised I'd be back early. On the drive home, the quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. The next evening, when I picked her up, she stared out the window for miles before asking softly, "Why doesn't anyone love me?" I pulled into a gas station, killed the engine. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and merciless. I didn't soften the truth. I told her some people only love what they can mold and control, that love with strings attached isn't love at all, that none of this was because of who she was, it was because of who they refused to be. She nodded slowly, as though she'd already half guessed it. "They make me feel like I don't exist," she whispered. I held her hand until the trembling stopped. That night, I reread my aunt's letter. I stared at the phone number and wondered how many generations this poison had seeped through because no one had ever dared name it aloud. I didn't call her. Not yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Anyone who made my daughter question her own worth would never get another chance to try. The next sign arrived quietly, the way the most dangerous things often do. It wasn't a phone call or a furious text. It was a screenshot forwarded to me by Mrs. Clay, the neighbor who treated gossip like a public service but rarely fabricated details. The image showed my mother's Facebook post. Elegant, white cursive text overlaid on a soft focus photo of a single flickering candle. Sometimes bridges burn because they were never meant to carry you forward. No tags, no names, just enough vagueness to invite speculation. The comments had already begun piling up. "Stay strong, Mama." "Some kids never appreciate what parents sacrifice." "You've always been such a good mother. Don't let this break you." My mother replied to each one with measured grace. Phrases about heartbreak, finding peace, learning to let go. The same performance she'd perfected in person, now polished for digital applause. I closed the screenshot without liking, commenting, or even opening the app again. I had lived the reality. I didn't need to debate the fiction. A few days later, they appeared at my house without warning. I was unloading grocery bags from the trunk when I spotted them on the porch, standing as though they still had a right to the space. My pulse kicked up, but I forced calm. I didn't want my daughter hearing shouting or seeing tears turned into weapons. I carried the bags inside, shut the door softly, then stepped back out alone. My father spoke first. "We just want to talk." He said they missed us. He said they missed her especially. He said they were ready to move forward. Then, almost offhand, he added, "We're willing to apologize. That's what you need to hear, right?" Not, "We're sorry." Not, we were wrong. Just another negotiation, another item on a list to unlock what they wanted. My mother stepped in. We shouldn't let pride tear apart the only family we have. And then, unable to help herself, now that things are calming down, can we finally talk about getting the car back? That was the moment something inside me went still. Not rage, not sorrow, just crystalline clarity. I looked at them both and said the words that had been waiting years to surface. There will be no starting over, no more conversations, no more negotiations. This is done. My father frowned, still convinced I was bluffing. My mother warned me I'd regret it someday, that when they were gone, I'd realize what I'd thrown away. I met her gaze without flinching. I already regret how long I tried to fix something that was never whole. I turned, walked inside, and locked the door. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They simply left. That month, I severed the final threads for good. Every last bill, every auto payment, every small lifeline I'd once kept open, I closed them all. Nearly $2,000 a month freed up overnight. For the first time, I asked myself what my daughter and I could build with that space instead of what we could repair. We enrolled her in a weekend pottery class. I repainted her bedroom the exact shade of pale green she'd begged for, strung fake vines along the windows, and bought her a bed shaped like a little house with fairy lights draped over the headboard. One evening, while she sorted her markers by color, she looked up and asked quietly, "So, are they gone now?" "Yes," I told her. She smiled, not with anger, not with sadness, just simple, unguarded relief. Good. The next weekend, she came home from pottery with a small clay pendant she'd made herself. It was purple, slightly lopsided, shaped like a heart with her tiny fingerprint pressed deep into the center. She tied a leather cord through it and slipped it over my head. "Wear this," she said, "so you won't forget I'm yours." I put it on and never took it off. I didn't lose a family. I stopped paying rent to live inside someone else's distorted version of love. I chose my daughter's emotional safety over their comfort, her sense of worth over their pride, my peace over a forgiveness that had only ever flowed one direction. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I touch that little clay heart and remember how close I came to teaching her that love must be earned by shrinking herself small enough to fit other people's hands. I didn't teach her that. I taught her that real love doesn't erase you, and that lesson was worth every bridge I let burn.